To have faith in God is not a stagnant state, it's a journey. As believers, we should grow in our knowledge of God and His Word. Walk with Alan Cutting and many other believers as we walk the believer's journey.
Thank you for joining us with the believer's journey. I want to thank everyone who prays for our program, prays for our ministry, everyone who watches our program and who shares it. I want to thank all of you who subscribe to our channel. If you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to do so. Download below on the YouTube, hit subscribe, and makes it easier for you to get to us, and it helps us to actually become more closer to the top of the list. I also want to thank our sponsors, Guerrero CPA, Guerrero Law, and Trade Show Displays. And we've got an amazing year going ahead of us. We're already in the planning of going to Eastern Europe and Western Europe this year for about 6 weeks. And that's going to be coming up pretty soon, just in the fall. And so we've got some exciting things going on with our ministry this year. I have a really neat guest friend of mine. His name is Terry Parks. Sparks. I am sorry.
That's fine. It doesn't matter.
I know a Terry Parks.
Yeah, listen, you don't have to do that with me, brother. If I remember your name, it's a miracle.
Oh. And Terry is a pastor in Sulphur Springs to a church called Family Life Church. Yeah. And he has recently retired. And so we're going to talk about pastors and ministers and retirement. And then our topic for the day, for the second half hour, we're going to talk about the peace of God in troubled times.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's going to be a very insightful and impacting hour. And all of you who are in the ministry, I think this is going to be a really good program for you to watch. Anyway, so welcome, Terry.
Thanks, Alan, for having me.
And so give us a little bit about your background, your bio, yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, I was I dropped out of high school, troubled mom, single mom. Mom married a bad guy. I was a redheaded stepchild, so to speak, and led me on a journey through alcohol and drugs. And finally, out of desperation, I joined the Navy, and I went down and took a GED and joined the Navy, and then fell in, drugs have a way of finding you. So I continued the drug lifestyle for a long time. And then I came back to my hometown and met a lady, a young girl that I had been sweet on. But so we ended up getting married, and her parents were Christians. And the pastor said, just promise me that you'll take her to church when she decides to go. And one day she looked up at me and she says, I want to go to church. And I went, I'm the blankety blank, blank, blank. You want to go to blankety blank church, And so she says, you don't have to go with me. And that was back during the Jesus Revolution in the 70s in Northern California. And these hippies were getting saved like crazy. And I walked into a church that was not an ordinary church. It was something else. And I ended up giving my life to Jesus, got off drugs, went to Bible college, and then pastoring, and then went on and got my doctorate in theology. So, I've been blessed to go to 43 nations preaching the gospel. And the Lord's really blessed my wonderful life. I lost my wife at 48 years. She's with my partner in ministry. And then that's why I'm in San Antonio, is I had a lady that had a dream of introducing me to my current wife, Laura, which I resisted. And 16 months later to the date, we were married. And I sold everything and started over and moved away from my family, my churches, and moved here to start over.
And that's basically how you and I got to know each other, because of Laura.
That's right.
And actually, Laura's been on this program.
Yes.
I think twice.
Yeah.
She's been on, at least one of them was the Bible Questions on the Fly. She was moderator. So amazing lady.
She is.
So you were pastor for how long?
Well, I've been in and out of ministry for 50 years. So, but I pastored there in Sulphur Springs for 19 years.
Okay.
And what happened is that the church was growing good. We went through some very troubled times. I took a church that was in 911. Nobody would want it. It's like if I told you all the stuff they hadn't paid payroll taxes on people that they'd hired to help construct the thing for 3.5 years. They had a lawsuit against mechanics lien against the pastor, and the builder got crossways. Oh my goodness. I preached my first service to 25 people, and some of the ladies there were praying against me, that they didn't want me there. And first Monday, I opened up $1,200 worth of past due bills, and had a $25,000. Well, back then it was like, I think, $2,500 a month mortgage, and preaching to 25 people. You get to start doing the math. There's not enough money there to do it. But you know what? Over the next 4 years, God just totally turned it around, through prayer and following him, or him dragging me into obedience, so to speak, and God just brought a miracle. And then we went ahead and planted a church, and my son had over 4,000 people in church. So out of the ministry, God continues to just bless. So what happened is, in regard to my transition, because transitions are difficult. And I had heard a guy talk one time about passing the baton, the leadership baton, to the younger man. In a relay race, Alan, when we run, the guy passes it to the fresh next man going. If that first runner just decides, no, I don't trust anybody else, I'm going to run the whole race by myself, he'll lose. And this is about kingdom, so it's not about personalities. It's about kingdom. And I began to look around my congregation, and a congregation is like a child. Like a person that's born. It's an infant. It goes through puberty, then teenage years, then full adulthood, and then if you're not careful, the church will begin to decline if the pastor doesn't continue to stay relevant. And I had a lot of young people around me, but I started looking around, and I started thinking about, I need to transition this out. The main reason why is because I didn't have any more vision. I was in a place where we had a good complex at 20-something acres. Everything was great, but I was going to have to build again, and I just didn't have it in me. I just didn't have it in me. I would go to staff meetings, and I would rather give you $20 and let you hit me in the nose than go to another staff meeting. I just started despising them. I love preaching. I love teaching. I love loving the people of God. But I told my leaders, I said, we need to make a transition. And my son had served me for 17 years, and I'd sent him out to plant a church. So we ended up being a campus for him at the elders' approval. And then I started doing missions full time, which I still do missions. Slowed down some because of my marriage with Laura. So we're still getting to know each other, so to speak. But I have a Bible college in Ghana. I've got, I pastor in Saudi Arabia. I've got, like 5 churches, people that look for leadership and things along the way. But so now I just kind of, I'm going through it all. But the transition into leadership, you're never a success without a successor. And you always need to be looking for the Isaac, so to speak, the son in the faith, or the daughter in the faith. I'm not anti that. So God began to just deal with me about that. And it took me about 3 years to transition from the beginning that I really felt it was the Lord. And year 2, we thought we were going to do it. I said, I'm 95% sure. And then, I didn't do it. I'm glad I waited another year, because it was just a healthier transition when we were able to do it. And when I stepped out of the pulpit to the pew, it was shocking. my current wife of 40, I mean, my previous wife of 48 years, she had to deal with me because I was going through a point of just grief, identity crisis, not knowing who I was, where I fit. Because the ministry can become addictive, and because the anointing when you preach and you minister is just wonderful, especially when you're in that vein and you feel the Holy Spirit really helping you, and it's just wonderful. And then the people of God that you blessed. I was blessed to have a wonderful church, never had any trouble, so the people just loved me, and it was an amazing time. And then when I stepped there, I went to my son's campus and left the campus that town that I lived in. It was like 45 minutes down the road. So I became Brian's dad, so to speak. Of course, they still honored me. Many of them still knew who I was, and honored me in the way that. But still, it was a real transition for me. And it's still an ongoing transition for me, but it's not. If it's David, the Bible says that David served his generation and died. And you have to have a successor to go on in ministry. If you don't, then everything that you build will go to. It won't go to a son. It won't go to someone that you raised up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, especially men with ego, believe me, I have ego and pride like everybody else does. But if you just start thinking about you or a paycheck, it can become a very difficult life. And it's been an adventure for me to do this. But the thing that I found out the most is that when I step out of the limelight, so to speak, I still preach for churches and things, but when you step out of the limelight, it's just you and Jesus. And I prayed a dangerous prayer one time. I said, Lord, I want to know you. I want to know you. I want a part, because it's not what we do that makes us who we are. It's who we know, and He is the one. He alone is the one that makes the difference in our lives. Through the death of my wife, people, I lost her to COVID, and a lot of people want to know how'd you do it. I did it in the floor, in a fetal position, praising Jesus. That's all I knew how to do. I didn't get lost in the why. I don't know why. Her death was between her and Jesus. It wasn't between. He was her savior. He died for her. I did not. And I don't know what happened in that, because I'm a guy that believes very strongly in healing. I believe it's always God's will to heal. And when it doesn't happen, I just don't get lost in the why. It's just us. God is still God. I am not.
Yeah.
And how can the clay say of the potter, wait, what are you doing here?
Well, it's interesting. So my audience knows I've spoken about this a lot. I actually moved into a pastor's home when I was about 16 and a half, 17, through college, my first few years. And I learned from him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he became like my surrogate father. My father left when I was 9. And he kind of became my mentor also through life. And he's today is still
Wow.
So he's
what a prize.
He's amazing. And he just retired some years ago. But when he was in Hawaii, pastoring a church, and it was in his denomination, it was the largest church in all of the islands on Oahu. And so he got a phone call from a previous youth pastor of his who actually was a senior pastor of a church, and told him he would like to have him as his senior adult pastor So Lon said, well, let me pray about that. And he gets back to him. He says, I will only do that if I don't have to go to board meetings
Mm-hmm.
because I am done with it. I don't want the stress. And I think that's when you get to a point, like you said, I didn't have any more.
Oh, I didn't have any grace for it anymore.
And I think that's where he was at. But so he got hired on as a senior adult pastor, and he was there for years. And he built this thing into a huge.
Wonderful.
He got to preach on Sunday evenings or the off times when the main church met. He met with the senior adults. They went on vacations and trips and did all kinds of stuff. Had their own Bible studies. And recently he just retired. But then he became the interim pastor over here for 6 months, an interim pastor over there for 3 months, an interim pastor. So, and he got to be more busier than he was when he was pastoring. And then he kind of let go of a lot of that. So he would fill in for pastors here and there and Bible studies on certain evenings in churches. And so he's scaled back. Of course, his health now is getting where he can't be as full-time as he wants to be. But he taught me, I say all that to say the fact that he taught me when I was young that a person who's called to the ministry, because I believe I was called at that point when I was young, a person who's called to the pastor, to the ministry, isn't just called until they're 40 or 60 years old and retire and you're done.
Well, it's in your DNA.
Right. You're called for life.
It's in your DNA.
And I remember that and learn that and feel that. It's more than I just think that and believe it. I really feel that within. And I've watched pastors come to an age of, I'm 65, I'm going to retire. And so now they've set up their garage to tinker the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And they totally are not even involved in the churches except for attending.
Yeah.
And yet I've seen pastors like Lon or like yourself who continue in ministry somewhat where they're still involved.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, especially because, my son has a Bible school there and I was teaching there and very involved. He asked me, I didn't want to be an elder for him. I was kind of an advisory elder, so to speak, and was, I think it was on some board he had me, I think. I don't remember what it was, but it was when I moved here that I don't know anyone in the churches that I have gone to are very large. How does a guy that doesn't know anyone start over? Because, because pastoring is a very lonely job. It can be. Because your congregation, you love them, you will do anything for them. If they leave, you got to dig them out of your heart with a spoon. It's just hard, but you can't confide in them.
Right.
And my best friend that I met in Bible college in '76, he died on me, and now a lot of the older guys are just starting to go to heaven. And now I'm the guy, and the guy still needs a guy. I have a pastor that I can call, and he asked him to be my pastor, and he's an amazing man. Helped me walk through the death of Sandy. I'm still, by the way, I'm still in counseling for that, and it's been over 3 years. But I still am working through grief, still working through change. When I left, not my family's about 80% of it were good, about 20% of it were not. So there's still a little bit of tension there when me moving here, leaving the ministry and everyone. But I kind of feel like we have an approach like this. We're kind of Abraham. Get up, go. I'll show you what to do when you get there.
Yeah.
And there's got to be kind of a faith for that.
Yeah.
God opens the doors. I've had guys that's promised me stuff and they've never followed through. And I don't blame them for that. I'm not mad. I don't get upset about that because God's the one that promotes. He's the one that opens doors and do those things. So, I saw you the other day. You hate asking for money. I don't like to call people up and ask to preach.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I think it's wrong. And I know I'm not against people that do that, but I can't do that. I can't
Yeah.
do that. God, I think you can say this too, Alan, that through our ministry, that God has always provided.
Yeah.
And he's always showed up. And when we get in situations that we don't understand, we just keep doing what we know to do. We stay in the Word. We have to fight. I have to constantly remind myself about the Scriptures in regard to my attitude can get a poor me. I can become, self-pity. All those things that begin to try to attack us, especially after a pastor leaves the flock and he no longer has the recognition that he once had, and then he can't seem to look around and see all what God has blessed them with.
Yeah.
When I start having difficulty in grief or even because I married a Mexican lady, she's been here for like 17 years, but our culture, I'm a Texas boy. I mean, a gun toting Texas boy. And she's Mexican. She looks at me and she said, "Who are you?" And I look, who are you, you beautiful Latin mama? But it's such an adventure, her and I, and the culture and the things that we've gone through, the difficulty, man, I just know just one this. I found out I got to repent quick and pray. That's all I know to do when going through things. But life, as long as we're breathing, the Lord is guiding. If we acknowledge God in all our ways, he'll direct our path. If you don't know where you're at, just keep acknowledging God.
Yeah. It's interesting. Since I've had this ministry, the Believer's Journey, and on the program, so I have people all over the country to watch here, and I have people all over the world to watch the program. And there have been people that have written to me various ways. They either write me by messenger, or they have my email, or somewhere they write me. But I've had a few times where somebody has written me because of a situation, a bad situation. Right. Something's happening and they need help or guidance. And sometimes it's okay, I get a lot of that and it's okay. But sometimes I've had a few things happen where I just cannot answer. I feel like I need wisdom.
Oh yeah.
and like in my life, I grew up making impulse or really bad decisions and living with those bad decisions and not changing them for a while until God finally smacks me upside the head and said, "Hey, wake up."
Yeah. We've all done that.
Oh, and so I have Lon, like I told you, but then I have a missionary friend named Radu in Moldova. He's a lot younger than me. He's 45 or so, going on close to 50 now. And he's a lot younger, but he's got wisdom. He's got the gift of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so he is a person who is my mentor, and he's my best friend.
Uh-huh.
So when I get a real problem, it's like, "Hello, Lon," or "Hello, Radu." It's like, I'm not going to sit there and go, "Okay, well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, this is what I think you should do." Not even close, because I have to have that guidance.
Yeah, I just go to the Word. I just start reading until I get an answer. I try to figure it out. I regularly check my attitude, and I just, matter of fact, just last night, give myself a serious attitude adjustment because I repented because I had felt myself moving into a place of you got a sense that there's something yet that you need to do, that something God's not done with you yet, and you can get impatient about that. And so we need people, like you said, to call, to bounce things off, to help us in that respect. And man, that is invaluable. It's just invaluable. If you don't, even now, I told someone, man, I got a counselor that I've talked to, he's like become my best friend. He's only a $200 an hour best friend, but still, he's a good guy,
Yeah.
and he's been through it, you know. And you got to have somebody in your life that you can. It doesn't matter young or old. I've got sons in the faith that are in their 30s, and my gosh, the wisdom and the amount of support. If I get around them, and man, they just energize me. They help me.
Yeah, and the point that I was end up making was it isn't that I could just go to my friend that I go out with for
No.
lunch every week and talk to him and ask questions. I've got to go to somebody that as a mentor who is spiritually mature, that I know I can go to, I'm going to hear it somewhere else. And just like you can't go to your congregation, you can't talk to your elders or board about things. They're your people.
Yeah.
But I wonder when we talk.
Now, I will say this: since I have made the transition, my son adopted my elder board when he started his church. Now, I still pastor that elder board. They look to me as their pastor, and I can say that since they still give me the honor and respect, but I've also become, with that group, I have become very transparent, and they have become my friends. But they still have an unusual ability to still, I don't know, I can't quite figure it out. It's like they still kind of hold me in the pastor position, but they give me the luxury to be human, you know.
That will always be too. It's just the way it is.
Because people don't understand. I mean, I told my son, I said, son, now I want to tell you one thing. When you become a pastor, just get ready. I said, there's going to be a big red target on your back. He said, whatever, Dad.
Yeah.
You know, about 6 months later, he came to me. He says, dear God, Dad, I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because even though my ministry is in the believer's journey and I don't have a congregation in any church form, I seem to have one in my Sunday school class that I teach.
Sure.
They look at me as a pastor. When I go to Moldova, there are many of the missionaries who come to me like a pastor.
Sure.
So you still have that.
Oh, listen,
ongoing.
I think that we mess it up, Alan. I had a dentist in my church. I said, you're the pastor of your practice. We taught the young people, you're the pastor of the school that you go to. Wherever you are, if you're a bricklayer, you're the pastor. You're the pastor wherever you go. Because when you really start looking at it, all we're called to do is equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. We're not to do the work of the ministry. I remember a Sunday that I stood up in church and I quit. I said, I'm done. I've done it all. I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to teach you. God's called me to teach you to do the ministry. And I started trying to do my best to work myself out of a job. Because people genuinely want to help the ministry. When people come to church, they want to become involved. One of the biggest conflicts I had with staff is that they wouldn't give their jobs away to other people because they didn't think they could do it as good as they did. And I said, that's called discipleship.
Yeah.
Discipleship is not she is Bible teaching, but it's in the ditches where you learn the best. When you do things wrong, so I think churches sometimes they get bottlenecked because pastors won't let go of the reins. They don't trust it. They can't do anyone. No one can do it as good as they could. Well, the truth is probably not.
So where you are today, so you no longer have a congregation because you're no longer the pastor, but you're retired, but you see yourself in ministry. How do you see yourself? In other words, for all the ministers watching our program who are still in ministry, who are going to face where you are today.
Yeah. Boy, if I could sit back, I said, if you make a transition out of ministry, because it's just different. Some people, I was always non-denominational. So we were planners. So when we would go in, we would be the senior pastor. There's not even a senior pastor before us. And I would say, this is the thing, when you transition to church, I don't care how much you love your son in the faith or whoever it is, get it in writing. Don't slap one another on the back. Get it in writing because what I think about how things are going to go and how you think things are going to go, we think we know what we're talking about. The truth is there's not. And I did this with my son, and I found out that there was a lot of misunderstandings. Now we were Christian about it. We didn't have any. I just sucked it up and okay, that's my fault. I was the leader in this. If there's a mistake, the leadership, and the leader has to take responsibility because I didn't. It was up to me to help to make this, because I was a senior guy, to make this transition go, and I didn't do it the right way. But it all worked out. Do that, and then your elders have got to be on board for a transition. They've got to see it. I actually, Alan, after I was making the transition, I said, "This is what I'm going to do." I met with my senior. I went to lunch with my senior elder, and we were outside the restaurant, standing on the street corner. And he said, "Pastor, the money's good." He says, "There's not any financial problems. The church is growing. Everything's great." He said, "Just stay." And I sat there and said, "Man, that's so flattering." And I looked at him and I said, "But it's not about me or you. It's about the next generation. And our job is to give the ministry away to the next generation." In the church, it was. Now you're different, but in the church, some guys can pastor, and they do a good job of it. But and I always kind of question us. Okay, you see these mega church pastors, and you go, okay, what's going to happen when you can't get in the pulpit anymore? If you build it just around one person, you're building it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in deacon boards. I don't think that those can, because you can't run the church as a business. And businessmen that come in and they think that they're going to run the church like a business, they don't understand.
Well, I think a lot of your independent churches, a lot of the pastors want it that way, and they build them that way. I mean, I know a couple of them already even in San Antonio that run that way.
You mean as regard to that they are the only
one? The pastor is the head, and the board is basically like a board of directors rather than a board of elders.
Well, legally in the state of Texas, there has to be someone that can pull the purse strings.
Yeah.
In that respect. But regardless, I know exactly what you mean. I had an elder board that I would go in, and it says, "Well, we need to do this, this, this." And he said, "Well, whatever you want to do, Pastor." I said, "I'm not wanting that. I want your opinion. I need your opinion. If it's against what I think, then I need to know about it. And if it is against what I think we should do, then we'll table it and pray about it until we know what God's will is."
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate, and that's the way.
Well, I do that in my marriage.
It's where you should be in the church, but what we're seeing is a lot of pastors will say, "Well, this is what I want," and they're basically handpicked to say, "Okay."
Yeah, and again, that is to the own pastor's demise. That will bite him in the rear end somewhere down the road. You don't want someone to control the church. I mean, the senior pastor, he's the one that took all the risk.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, if you're not careful, he forgets that who is the head of the church. And I've tried to lead very open-handed. I was not a domineering pastor. I taught my staff, listen, what you're doing, try to give it away. It's the sound people give your job away. That's the way. And I actually had Wednesday night services, and I said, I'm quit preaching on Wednesday night. I'm raising up preachers. And I started helping these guys learn to preach and let them, and man, the church, they loved it. They loved all these, guys coming up with their message. And you know what? They were good.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've never been a senior pastor. I've only been associate pastor. I think I like it. Now I look back, I think I'm glad I was only sitting.
Oh, listen, I love second man. I did second man for 6 years. I loved it.
Oh yeah. I had one pastor, I was the guy who preached Sunday nights, and I had another pastor. Well, I did the Wednesday night Bible studies and so forth. In fact, the pastor on Wednesday night, the church I was associate, he came to my Bible studies. It was kind of cool.
He loved it.
So it's really neat.
You know, I had my son-in-law preach. He's I call him a geek. He's into computer stuff, but he preached it, man. The way he brought it to light is ways that I would have never, ever thought about it. And I was just intrigued. He's one of my favorite speakers now. Yeah. And he's not elegant, you know, I got such respect for him.
Well, it's funny because I'm not real charismatic or dynamic, but somehow like with this situation, it's just so easy.
Yeah.
And people get all uptight, and yet it's like,
well, it's a Hawaiian shirt that does it.
Maybe, you know. There are people actually think that because I always wear the Aloha shirts, they think I'm actually in Hawaii.
Oh yeah, well, good.
So, and it's interesting because even in the Believer's Journey, as we started with just the program, now we go to Moldova and this and that. Susan's become more involved. She's been teaching. She's gone to the women's jail and taught, or has gone, and she's asked to teach teenage girls and
wonderful
other things. So she does counseling and speaking with ladies.
You need your, my wife would not get involved in that. But you know what? All my family are preachers, all of them. I mean, all of them. And but my wife was the loudest preacher of us all, even though that she didn't. And she was silently encouraging, ministering, believing. I had one guy that his mom was actually in ministry with her dad, and he came. He says, honestly, when she died, he pulled me aside and he says, honestly, I won't tell you. He says, your wife encouraged me more than my own mother. Yeah. And that's their ministry is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that we can get bottleneck about senior pastors. What they have to do is between them and the Lord. I don't know. I love good preaching. I love to be challenged by the word. But man, what really happens Monday through Saturday is it's the people of God that go out and do the work of the ministry, loving their neighbors. What do you do now? I said, love God, love people, man. Just love God, love people.
And, and listening when I'm in Moldova, and we're going to wrap this up and start our second half pretty soon, but listening to some of the missionaries in Moldova, thinking about when they retire. And so in my talk with them, I said, well, retire, what do you mean? Well, when I'm done. I've got to think about how I'm going to afford to live. I said, well, you're not just done. If you're called to ministry, then you still continue in ministry. You may not be doing this full time, but you still want to have the area of God where God has gifted you to.
A lot of that is financial because when you give everything away and you sacrifice your life and unfortunately some pastors are not financial gurus.
And they haven't been taught that they need to put some aside for the future.
They have not. They live by faith.
Yeah.
And then their health starts to decline, or they can no longer do what they need to do. And I've seen that God continues to provide. I have been blessed that I've got sons in the faith that help me now and take care of me, and I don't want for anything. So
and here I'm getting older, and the Believer's Journey is getting bigger. And I'm thinking, this is going the wrong way.
No.
Usually I should be younger when it gets bigger, not older.
No. Well, evidently, but see, again, the fruit's there. So you just keep doing what God calls you to do. As long as the fruit's there, you just do it. Nothing's forever.
That's true.
Nothing. I mean, if you're a pastor, I'm telling you, transition is coming.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, how big or how small or whatever. Transition's coming. I never dreamed in a million years that, in 19 days, my wife would be in heaven. It just did not ever dawn on me
Yeah.
because she was in perfect health.
Yeah.
And I mean, my heaven on earth, and man, my life collapsed.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd smile again, but you know what? God's works. He now married to a beautiful woman, as you can very well testify, and she's prettier on the inside and she's gorgeous on the outside, but boy, she's a lovely lady.
She is. She's an amazing lady.
Yeah. And people said, why did you marry the gringo? She's a lot prettier than I am handsome. I'll put it that way.
Oh, she's so, and she keeps busier than anybody I know.
Oh my God. She came in 11:30 last night.
She wrote me and told me that.
And I told her, I said, I said, all right, I'm giving you grace. Just do it. Because I'm trying to set, she works so much. And I says, I'm trying to set boundaries, to teach her how to set boundaries, I said, you don't carry the phone into the shower, do you? No. I said, so you do have a boundary. I said, let's extend that just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, she needs that kind of discipline and learning.
No, I'm trying to move her towards this, enjoying the Sabbath, where she just doesn't do anything work-wise one day a week.
Well, I try to teach that. It's hard, especially in Texas. Where I come from on the West Coast, whether it's California or Nevada or Hawaii. Your day of rest is your day of rest. Not, I'm at church for an hour later, and now I can go to work or go play golf and go do all this extra stuff. No, it's a day to rest for the Lord and honor Him. And for some reason, I feel like I speak this to people in my group till I'm blue in the face, because that doesn't happen, because it's just not the mentality here.
Well, the Sabbath was made for man. It wasn't made for God.
Yeah.
And we were told to let the land rest in 7 years. You start doing a study on that. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah.
It goes deep quick.
Yeah.
And so people that lose vision, get sick, lose enthusiasm, they're working too much.
Yeah.
You got to take a day and unplug. If that's it, I always put it like this. I says, if whatever you like to do it with the family, put God in it, in the middle of it, and then go have fun with your family.
And I think that's true in all your life. I mean, there's so many ministers in all realms that are so busy in their ministry. It's 7 days a week, and it's like, oh yeah, well I have dinner with my wife once in a while. Oh yeah, I take you
got to have a date night.
And they don't, and there's a lack of family. And then they get to the age where they're 65, 70, 75, and they still haven't learned that their family is part of that, need to.
I had a revelation. God healed me of congestive heart failure. I was dying.
Mm-hmm.
My fraction rate my body was producing 27% of the blood that my body needed. The power of God healed me. I just kept saying, I'll live and not die. By His stripes, I am healed. I just kept confessing the word. And my father-in-law prayed for me, and I was miraculously healed right on the spot. But what I learned in that was start looking around people that are around you. Your wife, your husband, whoever that may be, is a gift from God. And they should never take second. They should never feel like they're second. The church can become a mistress very quickly.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most respectful way. I mean that because I was working 70 hours a week in the church. And I remember one day my wife, she says, just get a cot and live there. Mm-hmm. It's pretty bad when the elder board brings you in and says, go home. We don't need a divorced man on our staff.
Yeah.
Because when the more it grows, it becomes a corporation. And I was over the finances and administrating the church at the time. So it was a huge church, and it was just becoming 2 secretaries, 23 employees, and it just became more than I could handle.
Yeah.
And if it grows, it can consume you. And the truth is just like a corporate world, If you die, they'll just step over your dead body and get somebody else to do what you did. I mean, they'll cry for a while,
Yeah.
but ministry is much more than ministry is loving God, loving people, putting your spouse, your family first in all that you do. And it's a fun thing. I love ministry.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of person that needs to be in the ministry, who loves it. And
I always tell this. I tell a young man, said, I have a grandson says, I want to be a pastor. I says, if you can do anything else, do it. Says, only do this if you cannot talk God out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not for the faint of heart.
And I tell people, only do it if you're absolutely called to do it, not just.
Well, Alan, I was never called.
We had to be called.
Well, what happened to me, of course, I got saved. Next thing you know, I'm speaking to people, but I never felt like I was called to pastor or preach. And I made a promise my homiletics teacher that I would never turn down an opportunity to preach. And then lo and behold, these little churches started asking me to preach. I mean, I remember getting diarrhea and sick to my stomach, begging God for a message on the way to there. And you know what? God just continued to develop. And then one day, man, it was like this. It was my destiny all along. But you gotta understand, I came out of a very bad environment, so it took a while for God to clean me up emotionally.
And it's interesting because I felt God after I was saved. I felt God calling me to the ministry. But back in the 70s, universities and churches were only set up to, when you go to learn, you were only taught to pastor.
Yeah.
You weren't taught to do anything else. And so I was a youth pastor while I was going to school. And when I graduated, I went to a church to be a youth pastor in Las Vegas. And the pastor there was just, it was all about, he did his own thing, counseling. He was a doctorate in psychology. He counseled everybody, and he gave me the keys to do this and do that. I was a gopher.
Yeah.
And ministry, that was foreign to me because the pastors I was under before was all about ministry. Well, this was not ministry. So I quit. I just flat out quit. And I got a call a couple of days later, 3 days later maybe, and from a pastor from a Pentecostal church who happened to have a school,
Mm-hmm.
and said, you're in need of a job. I understand you. And I said, well, yeah. Well, how do you know this? This little birdie told me, and I have no idea because I don't know anybody outside of my family that knew this. So he says, well, we have a school. We need a Bible teacher. Well, I'm not a teacher. He says, well, you've done Bible studies before, with
Sure.
youth groups. Well, yeah, but that's not the same with 25 kids in a room and you're having.
Yes, it is.
But all I thought was what the pastor.
Yeah, no.
So I ended up going to talk to him because I had time. He wanted to see me. And so I ended up taking the job. And I walked in there the first day to teach Bible. And it was like second nature. It was like breathing air. It was so easy. And it wasn't until a few years later, I realized the Holy Spirit gave me the gift to teach.
Yeah.
And I became a Bible teacher after that. But in the beginning, I felt there was a scripture that really gripped me. It's in Romans about who will hear except those who speak, etc. Okay. Right. So somebody said, well, that's a missionary passage. I'm like, well, I have no idea, but I'm not called to be a missionary. Well, today, that's what I do. That's what the believer's journey is all about, is doing mission work for all over the place.
Yeah. I taught missions for a year at Christ the Nations in Dallas, Texas. I had my best friend was a director, and he manipulated me in taking the job. And I didn't like the clerical. I told him, I says, listen, I do short term. Missionaries are long term, in my opinion. I'm not negating it. I probably need to adjust on that. And I says, you could get somebody better to do this than me. He said, yeah, I know, but I can't afford them. I can afford you. Because I was pastoring the church. So I'd drive down and teach the class, and stay down there for 3-4 days. And I'd go back home and pastor the church there. And, but I just have such a great respect for people that will go and live on the field
See, and my view has changed. I used to think missionaries go and they stay.
Oh, I believe like you too.
See,
Yeah.
they go, they stay the 5th year, they come home, they do their sabbatical, they go back for 5 more years, they come home for, that was what because that's our denomination was that way. And that's the way I always thought. But now, the way I see it, well, I go for about 5-6 weeks every year.
That's a long time.
And then I come back, but I'm supporting the missionaries there. We support them financially. We
Yeah.
also support them spiritually, counseling, talking, sharing all
Right.
through the year. And then when they come visit to raise their support and so forth and meet with their partners, we have them stay with us.
Yeah.
And it's all part of being a missionary.
Yeah. Well, part of that, yeah. When I first went to Ghana, I went there. It's a long story. This phone rings at 3:00 in the morning. A guy had saw a number that we had advertised for missions conference, and someone gave them my number, and he calls me, and it escalates to a point where I actually ended up start going to Ghana and help this young man. And I supported him for about 8 years, I guess. And I said, okay, I love you. I love you so much. I said, you're like my son in the faith. I said, but I'm never sending you another dime. I've taught you faith. I said, there's enough money in Ghana to build the work of God. I said, if you stay connected to me, you won't do all God called you to do. And then I went outside and I drew with my foot. I said, this is where you're going to build your next buildings, your children's room, your youth room, your new offices. And I've dedicated every single one of them with Ghana money. And now I went to preach for him one time, and you got to understand, this was as rustic as you can imagine. The church was,
Mm-hmm.
and I went in and I said, Lord, I mean, this was bad, but now I go in there. He's got Italian marble on the floor. He's got big screen TVs. They had one person that had a car when I first went and met him. Now the parking lot's full, and God just did it all. It's just astounding to see what God can do.
It's amazing because you have a lot of energy for a retired guy.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is there's no reason to stop.
No, there is not. That's one of the deals. It's, of course, just man of God to man of God is one of those things that's very perplexing to me because, I said, all right, Lord, I know there's something, you're up to something. So just do what you need to do with me. Here I am. You got my email, you got my phone number, you got all the stuff. You just let me know. And of course, I'm continually, I've got 2 opportunities. Someone asked me to preach here in a Mexican congregation this pretty soon. I'm going to go minister to another church here, is a larger church. And but God is just really with me and Laura. I think that we're in a season of trying to figure all this out because we're newlyweds, and then we're starting over, house, everything. And I'm 72.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm 40.
Well, it's, me, I have all this energy too, and it's just kind of weird, but I do.
I just, my wife said, well, you're not acting like 70. Leave me alone. I went, well, come on, Mama.
Oh, well, I think that it's interesting. I do look at Lon, my mentor, pastor, surrogate father.
Yeah.
I look at him a lot. His situation with him is he now has neuropathy in his feet and legs, and he has a hard time walking. So it's hard to get even go up and down stairs.
That nerve pain is horrible.
So, and his voice now, he still is one of the most amazing speakers I've ever heard. He can put a 10-minute sermon together, and it's got you thinking for 5 hours. I mean, it's just amazing.
Don't you love guys like that?
Oh, I know. It's unreal.
Yeah, I'll tell you, got most. But this is they don't teach you how to. How can I say this? I don't want to say it the wrong way. How to age gracefully in the ministry. There's no one, because like when pastors leave, they just kind of fade off
Mhm.
And you never hear the conflicts, you never hear the trouble, the heartache, the feeling useless, all these things that they feel about their lives after they begin to step off the public stage. And, I don't know. I, we see in the scripture, didn't the priest retire like at 58 or something like that? But they continue to raise up new priests
Yeah.
in the Old Testament.
I think, though, we have this idea that a pastor has to, especially in the older days, they had to look perfect, be perfect. There were basically everything was covered. I still think that's kind of the same today. Their faults or their infirmities or sicknesses or all that stuff is not really out there like it is in anybody else in the congregation.
I've been going attending a larger church here, and I've been amazed at the transparency of the pastor. For that large of a congregation, he just totally very transparent. So I'm a fellow struggler. I'm in counseling. Talks about the difficulties and stuff that he has, and I did that too. And I think you do that. I don't. I mean, we don't. I always, if I had an argument with my wife on Saturday night, they were probably going to hear about it Sunday morning, and they love me for that.
Yeah.
Because people are going through it. If what we say doesn't help them live their Christian life, how to stay married, how to believe God for finances, how to get wisdom, all the above, you go through it every week with these kind of things, then the church is failing. Because this is a difficult journey. It's a delightful journey, but we just like everybody else. I believe in healing, and I still, lost my wife. I was healed of congestive heart failure. I don't understand. It doesn't, and that's the beauty of it. We don't understand, and we still trust, and we still love, and we still give our lives to God every day that we wake up. Jesus, here I am.
That is the key. The key.
It's just it keeps my motor running.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that in this time of being on the shelf, so to speak. I mean, I get taken off every now and then, but man, me and Jesus are doing great.
Yeah, it's just like King David. Okay, he has this affair and he's got this child who dies, and yet God also forgives him.
Yeah.
I mean, but when he was done grieving for a week or so, he was back to do his.
He's about to challenging himself and things that to do.
So really, it's all about that surrender. It's all about that yielding to him.
Well, I celebrate you because when I first met you and things, I just didn't have any idea of what you really were doing and accomplishing. Man, I applaud you. I think you're doing a great job, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just peering over and said, man, this guy's got it going on. I'm sitting here and said, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Well, it's funny because when I was young, I have no fear to get in front of a crowd. It could be 60, 100,000 people and just teach.
Yeah, I was actually able to preach to 300,000 people in South Sudan. That's my largest crowd. We used to do conferences in the Amazon, in Bolivia, and places like that. We do 7,000. But you know what I got the most joy out of?
What's that?
Being in a room full of pastors, 10 pastors.
Yeah.
5 pastors.
Yeah, last year I got to teach a whole room of pastors about becoming like Jesus and how important that is to become like him. And here's how you become and why you become like Jesus. And here you need to take that, make sure you build it in your own life so that you can pastor and teach your congregation to do the same. And that was really cool that I got to do that. And you would think that pastor would think, well, I don't need this, but I had 3 of those pastors stood up and says, "This, I don't know about the rest of you, but I really needed this."
I always tell these young guys, I says, don't assume that you think the people of God know it, because you do.
Yeah.
Let's keep the gospel simple.
Yeah.
I've seen guys just want to overcomplicate it with government and stuff and things. No, 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 no. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time.
Okay. I got a wonderful message here.
I know we never got to it.
Well, I think it's best
So
for
you're
this.
gonna have to come back with this.
I'll come back and do anything you want to help you in any way I can. You're a prince of a man.
Oh, I appreciate that. I don't know. My wife will tell you the same, but
Well, I believe she would in private. She might. I mean, she'd pull me aside and tell me that,
There you
but
go.
she might not tell you that to your face. But I tell you what, if somebody trashed your brother, I bet you she would get them.
she would. She would. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and look forward to us coming back again and talking about the peace of God in troubled times. So I hope this really benefited everything that you see in ministry, living through it and living once you step aside from the full time and getting into the afterlife of ministry. So thank you for watching us today. You all have a wonderful day. You have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again. Aloha.